Safid, like you've rightly pointed, a powerful woman, the member of parliament for Laikipia North, and probably, if time allows us, she will tell us about her journey, because it's been a treacherous one to becoming the member of parliament for Laikipia North. But be sure to catch up again in the conversation with CJ Martha Koome tomorrow in our bulletins. But in the meantime, Sarah Lekorere is in studio. Mheshimiwa, karibu sana.
Asante.
Hey,
Thank
how are you
you
doing?
I'm okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Karibu.
Asante.
Let's kick off, with the security situation and the volatility in Laikipia, as it were. Mid-July, the Cabinet Secretary for Interior comes there and orders all illegal herders. I don't know whether they are illegal herders and illegal herders, but all herders that had, invaded ranches in Laikipia County to get out within 7 days. That problem is still persistent.
Yep.
What is the problem?
Well, the problem is, this problem is fueled by many things. And key among them is biting drought that is witnessed up north. Up north, that is Isiolo, Samburu, Marsabit and onwards. But again, there is a lot of political mobilization by people who feel they have to boost their numbers in Laikipia, especially now that we are going, because this problem has been occurring like every time we are 1 year away to the election, we see these kind of things. Droughts are not a new phenomenon in the north, but for the last 4 years it's been reasonably quiet. And again, I will not want to say it's the illegal herders, because herders are herders and they are bandits, the lawbreakers, the criminals. And what we are witnessing in Laikipia is a lot of terrorism by these criminal gangs, because anybody who owns a gun and is not a law enforcement officer, is not a police officer, is not a licensed gun owner, then that's a criminal. And there are a lot of them in Laikipia. And currently the situation has been going from bad to worse.
Tell us, a directive by no other than the Minister for Interior, get out within 7 days. Why hasn't that happened? Is there any action being taken now by the police to flush these people out of these conservancies?
Well, I really don't want to speculate, but as you rightfully put it, it was in July, actually end of July, when Matiang'i came, and immediately left Laikipia. The following day, a man was shot dead in Wangwashi. In cold blood. And I think that was telling the CS that we are here to stay. And it's not just the conservancies, the likes of Laikipia Nature Conservancy. In fact, the small agricultural holdings, the community group ranches are suffering a great deal, because we've had people even destroying crops, we've got people killed, we've lost a lot of law enforcement officers, the National Police Reservists, the citizens of especially Laikipia West and North. So I think the problem is bigger than the conservancies. As
bigger as it is, are there boots on the ground? Because I'm interested, in that order by the Minister for Interior, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, are there boots on the ground doing the work of, removing these people from ranches and conservancies, bearing in mind the 7 days expired a long time ago?
Actually, since the time Matiang'i came and gave that order, there have fairly been nothing going on in the ground. And I don't know, but I'm told probably in the last 2 days, probably there's some kind of mobilization. But again, tension is very, very high.
He was in Parliament today. Did you get a moment with him?
I didn't, honestly, because he was appearing before the Parliamentary Committee on Security on other issues. And just like you saw it on the media, I also saw it on the media. And it is very interesting, because he appeared before that committee, very serious with a lot of information. And not once, not twice, personally, I've put statements in Parliament, to inquire from him about the security situation in Laikipia. And you rarely get those moments with the CS. So it's interesting how they rank this security situation in Laikipia.
Obviously, you talk about the problem of pasture with this drought that is there, and up north there's a big problem in terms of drought. But the minister then also promised that the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock would actually take up some of these herds of cattle and livestock to take them to government abattoirs to relieve the pressure on herders. Has that happened?
Not really.
Okay.
And from where I see it, I think drought is not really a problem in this country, because we know that these droughts are always there. And you know, you can almost predict that after a cycle of every 5 years, there is a serious drought, you know, looming. And from where I sit, you know, I believe if you don't plan, then you are planning to fail. You know, with the devolution, we thought probably counties will sit down and plan, you know, their pastures, you know, invest in putting water, especially in the pastoralist areas. And now that every county has their own monies, you know, they don't have to wait for Nairobi to decide what happens here and what happens there. But, you know, that is not happening. And, you know, we cannot want to lie to ourselves that Laikipia can accommodate all the livestock from up north. You know, it's not possible. It is not possible. And if you look at Laikipia today, you know, the geographical area, the climate, the weather in Laikipia is almost the same as Samburu and Isiolo. So you'll ask yourself a pertinent question: why is there no pastures in Isiolo and Samburu and this pasture in Laikipia? If, for example, you look at Samburu, it is twice as big as Laikipia, you know, in terms of land mass. But, you know, they have overgrazed their land. There are no proper planning of their pastures. There is no range rehabilitation. So what happens if we allowed everybody now to come to Laikipia because there is a serious shortage of pasture? You know, they will also overgraze Laikipia. And before we know, Laikipia will be as bad as Isiolo, Samburu, and elsewhere. So what happens? Where do we move next? Nyeri, Nyandarua, you know.
Quite interesting.
Right.
The place of politics in funding what we are seeing, invasion of ranches, private ranches, group ranches, the place of politics. Tell us about that, because immediately after Dr. Fred Matiang'i left that, and left that order, we saw the likes of, Senator Ledama or Lakina trying to throw in some words that probably would encourage these bandits one way or another.
Yes. You know, from where I sit, I think the utterances of Senator Ledama were seriously uncalled for, because Narok and Laikipia are two different places. And you know, if they claim, say, the historical land injustices, we are the people of Laikipia, we are the people that have been seriously affected by the historical land injustices. But if you look at the indigenous Maasai of Laikipia, if you look at the Samburus of Laikipia, if you look at the Pokots who live in Laikipia, they are not causing any mayhem. Right? So this mayhem is mainly coming from outside Laikipia County. Then somebody like Ledama sits in Narok, doesn't understand what is happening in Laikipia, and is uttering words that can actually risk, bringing about tribal clashes. It's very unfortunate. And from where I sit, I was trying to follow if anything will be done on Ledama, even if to just stop him or to curtail that kind of utterances. But I didn't see the NCIC summoning him over hate speech, because obviously that was hate speech geared towards other communities. And it's also very unfortunate that Ledama could say such a thing, because I'm not also a stranger to Narok. There are pastoralists in Narok, and people in Narok have sold their land, and we've seen that kind of tribal animosity in Narok. Their land was not taken by the whites, it's not taken by the government of Kenya. They themselves sold their land. What Ledama should be doing is educating his people against selling land, to invest in other things, and not, just poking his nose into things he doesn't understand.
And of course, you mentioned about the one police officer, shot dead by these bandits. There are several other people who've lost their lives in some of these incidents. But interestingly, the Kenya Police Service are no longer working in Laikipia. Is that true?
Well, sometimes back they withdrew all the police reservists, and the police reservists were quite helpful, because number one, they understand the terrain. Number two, their response was quite, they responded in good time, unlike the police, because most of them were living within the communities. And when the police reservists were withdrawn, I think it was something that was done across the country, which was actually misinformed, and Laikipia was exposed to attacks from outside. Because number one, the communities living in Laikipia do not have illegal firearms, but the neighborhoods, they are surrounded by very hostile communities and people who are heavily armed, especially from Tiati, from Samburu East, from Isiolo North. So since the withdrawal of the police reservists, we've seen an upsurge in the attacks towards Laikipia, and we've been agitating, for the restoration of the police reservists, which fortunately, I'm told even yesterday, the police people, the security agencies were revetting, the reservists, those one who are disarmed, with an intention of arming them again. So we will see how that works out.
All right. Yeah. And when you talk about disarmament, because every other single time when there are such attacks and banditry up north, including the Turkana, Pokot, Laikipia, we always hear about government saying we are mopping up these firearms in the hands of private citizens. What happens to the disarmament exercise? Because as soon as government says disarmament is happening, there is almost another attack, succeeding the disarmament.
Well, one thing I can say with a lot of confidence, from where I sit in Laikipia, I have never seen a disarmament happening. But that can partly also be because there are no illegal guns in Laikipia. The communities resident in Laikipia. And every time the government talks about disarmament, now, they talked about a disarmament and disarmed their own security partners, because the National Police Service are security partners with the regular police and other government agencies. So they disarmed their own, whom of course didn't have to be disarmed. It was an order, bring these guns back, and they brought them back. But the fellows, the criminals who are walking up and down the bushes of Laikipia with the illegal firearms, they were not disarmed, right? So it leaves a lot to be desired, what exactly is happening here.
I'm here wondering, to end this problem of, Laikipia ranches and banditry, what do we need? Do we need to arrest the political leadership in Laikipia, put them somewhere? Because it appears like there's always a genesis, coming from somewhere.
I'm sure arresting them will not solve the problem. And I can tell you this from where I sit. In 2017, we saw some politicians who are arrested in Laikipia, and for the politicians, that serves as they whip the emotions of the people, that we are being persecuted because of you. So instead of it working like for the government to discipline the people, it's working against the government because it gives the other person and especially when you arrest somebody, then just release without doing thorough investigations, without pinning them down to what exactly they are doing. I don't really think arresting anybody will solve this issue. But what will solve these issues is putting long-term plans in these communities. Personally, I've tried to do a lot of research as to why this thing is happening, as to why, some young men are willing to just throw their lives away, as in they really don't care about their lives. When you see 14-year-old boys surrounding a GSU camp and engaging them in a in a shootout, 14 years old, you wonder what motivates them. And the second question that comes to my mind, where do they get the firearms? Right? Where do they get the ammunition? Right? So personally, I've been trying, even in my area, in some places, I've been trying to ask myself, why is this thing happening? And part of what I discovered, which I think if the government, the national government, the county government will take it seriously, it will address this problem, though in its long term. And that is addressing the illiteracy levels among the pastoral communities.
Illiteracy levels among
pastoral communities.
Let me ask you this question very quick, because I'm under pressure to wind up in 1 minute, Mheshimiwa, because I've been present sometimes in instances where you were campaigning in Laikipia, even in the presence of a president, where your rival then, Matthew Lemporkel, would actually angle to embarrass you even in front of the president. How did you beat him in the last elections?
Very interesting.
Very quickly.
How I bet him, you know, I have an agenda for the people of Laikipia, and I had a plan, which I still do have a plan. And mine, I was not, you know, competing with him on, you know, those dirty politics of insults. Actually insulted me thoroughly. Sometimes I would get so embarrassed that my kids will watch these things in social media, and, you know, it was quite embarrassing. But I maintained my cool, and I made sure I didn't get my eyes off my plan. So I worked very hard to, you know, to sell my agenda to the people of Laikipia, to execute my plan, and that's how I beat my life.
All right. And you're running again in Laikipia North?
Of course, I'm retaining my seat. I'm not actually running, I'm sitting on the seat.
All right. Sarah Lekorere, the Member of Parliament for Laikipia North, talking about insecurity up north and Laikipia. The illegal herders or the bandits for that matter, because Mheshimiwa says bandits that are in those ranches. And this is where we put a cap on Extra Mile tonight. Thank you very much, Mheshimiwa, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Karen Kivet is up next with that Safina chain, with business.